Now that I can finally exhale, knowing that Taylor Swift's plane got her back in the country in time for the game, I thought you'd appreciate this breaking news. CBS has decided that out of spite, none of their cameras will be focusing on the field, but they will all be focused on Taylor Swift, so that the only way you can know how the game is going is by her reactions. I'm sure everyone would love that. Be that as it may, I'd like to actually talk about the game a bit. Now, one of the most exciting and dangerous roles in a football game is that of the punt returner. Now, if you're not a fan of football, if your team is stuck kind of back in their end and they want to get the ball further to the other end, they'll kick it as high as they can while the players run down and this other guy's waiting to catch it. And they want to try to pin that guy back in his field as far as they can. Now, I can't even imagine the discipline it takes for this guy to keep his eye on the ball. Now, if you watch any of the game today, you might observe this, right? As the ball hangs and hangs in the air, the punt returner is anxious to grab it and start running. Meanwhile, there are these mutants, really, who weigh 220, 240, who can run the 10-yard dash in 12 seconds maybe, hurtling down the field with one goal: obliterate him. Okay, that's really it. And knock the ball out of his hands, right? So somehow, even as they get closer and closer, he has to keep his eyes on the ball or else he will fumble. To make my point, you'll see a little bit in this video. There they are running down. There's the punt returner right there. See now, there they are coming at him. He has his eyes on the ball. He has to keep his eyes on the ball. And sometimes it ends like that. Okay. This is why I never became a professional football player. Just this. Yeah. I think it's amazing that even as he feels those guys coming at him to clobber him, he somehow manages to keep his eye on the ball and to grab it. Now, for Jesus, it was not giant football players running at him, but the effect had to be almost the same. And I'm not just talking about near the end of his life when people were trying to trap him and test him and kill him. I'm talking about his regular daily ministry. In Mark's gospel last week was a passage before today when he described a typical day in the life of Jesus: preaching in the synagogue, healing a man with an unclean spirit, curing Simon Peter's mother-in-law, reaching out in compassion to all kinds of people who were sick and possessed, and then they said the whole town was at his door. Today's the next passage, which describes more of the same. People coming at him everywhere, so much so that we end this passage with so many people were trying to get to him that it was impossible for him to enter a town openly. At least in a football game, it's only 11 guys coming at you, right? And it would have been so easy for Jesus to take his eyes off the ball, so to speak, to forget what his plan was, what he wanted to do, what his call was. And it's easy for Jesus, as it would be for us, to get distracted and to forget to keep the main thing, at which point we fumble our ministry. And so we are told that to help him, Jesus set off. Rising early, very early before dawn, Jesus went off to a deserted place to pray. Jesus was self-aware enough to know that he needed to step away from it all, to take time to be with his God so he wouldn't fumble his mission. He needed to remember who he was and what he was all about, to remember why he did what he did, and to actually root himself in the consciousness and the love bigger than just inside of him, but all around him, so that when all the needs were bearing down upon him, Jesus would somehow be able to keep his eyes on the ball and to remember why he was and what he was all about. You and I, we need to keep our eyes on the ball as well. Sometimes we each hear the pounding of the footsteps or feel the force of all that bears down upon us. How do we train ourselves to not fumble these opportunities, but to be ready to run with them? Now, there's many ways to get at it. This is really the stuff of authentic spirituality, which I try to address on one level each week. But since Lent starts so soon, I'm going to focus on the 3 invitations of Lent each year, which are all about this, helping us keep our eyes on the ball, to keep the main thing the main thing. The first discipline is the one that we hear of Jesus doing, prayer. From time to time, get away from it all, just as he did. For those of us who are busy, it's tough to make the discipline and time to do that sometimes, but if we can destimulate enough, we can remember again who we are, what really matters to us, and how we really want to be. Now, for sometimes it could mean an extended period, right? Signing up for that retreat or the parish mission or for a talk or getting a babysitter and getting some quiet time or a regular daily dedicated walk or each day just those 30 to 60 seconds of silence at noon or at 6 p.m. Again, just to step out of it and to be in a bigger consciousness and a bigger love to help us remember. First, prayer. The second is always almsgiving. By our care of the poor, our acts of kindness, and by our service, our efforts to make a more just and loving world, we are living our mission as followers of Jesus. We're doing what he did and what he asks us to do. And here's the thing, doing those things changes something in us and roots us more into who we really are. Prayer, almsgiving, and the third is sacrifice. Now, those punt returners had to sacrifice a lot. First, to be physically the specimen needed to do that job, but also to have the ability to focus their mind as they can hear without hearing, feel without these mutants racing at them, right? And so, when you and I enter into the disciplines of Lent with the right spirit, they help refocus our eyes on the ball. They help us keep the main thing the main thing. Because as I like to say, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. Again, as I mentioned at Mass, our bulletin has all kinds of possibilities. If you did some of those, none of those, or nothing at all, this is still true. There will be times when, as was for Jesus, it feels like the whole village is outside our door. Our life comes at us really hard. And if, like Jesus or like that punt returner, we've learned to keep our eyes on the ball, when life pounds us, we won't fumble. We'll remember what we have in here and move forward as we're meant to be. So, in the way that only you and I can do. So I don't know if you will watch any of the game today. Maybe you are like people I know who tune in just for the commercials. Or maybe it's for you all about Taylor Swift. But if you do watch any of the game, I do invite you to watch the punt returner and to imagine this discipline. As these guys are racing towards him, he keeps his eye on the ball. Yeah. I hope life doesn't clobber you like that. But they all come at us, life comes at us hard, each of us, at some point or another. And so that guy had to find a way to keep his eye on the ball. As Jesus would tell us, so do we. So do we.